Hi there, this is Alicia with Performentor, and we're doing another Heuristic podcast. This time we're with Cathi Loftin, and she's the Vice President of Human Resources at Parata Systems. And Parata is a pharmacy automation company that's been growing for a long time. So she knows a lot about people and trust. And that's eventually what we're going to be talking about. Is there anything like that you'd like to add, Cathi?
Sure. Thanks, Alicia, just for the opportunity to talk about this today. Yeah, in our company at Parata, we are going through a lot of growth, and that means a lot of new people coming in, some people leaving, and we've had some acquisitions and mergers over the years. And this topic of trust is a very relevant one to all that we've been dealing with in our world at Parata, and I think in companies in all industries, frankly.
Yeah. So, yeah, for those who don't know, Cathi and I have known each other since 2001
Oh, wow.
or two.
Around there, yes, a long time.
Long time. I played a role. I was probably the recruiter at the time that recruited her to work at the company that we both worked at for several years, worked together again later. And, she's one of the most trustworthy, high quality people. So of course I had to include her in these conversations. And the heuristic that we're going to talk about is to apply the trust algorithm. And she's been with me through the whole journey of the information and the things that we've learned that led to this algorithm. And just to recap what it is the more that an organization for each person and across it can align the accountability and the authority and the capability of the role to the person and between roles, the more trust is easier to have trust. Because so, for example, if the authority, meaning I've got the ability to make a decision about resources, yes or no, and then I'm also the one that's accountable for the results. If I can't make decisions to enable resources that I need in order to do the thing that I'm accountable for, you can see how that might break down trust. And that's just one way that it breaks down, but it's a really robust algorithm. So that's that. I don't know. What is your initial take?
Yeah, it is robust but simple at the same time. Trust it's one of those things that we talk about a lot. Leaders and managers talk about it a lot, and you call it out in the chapter. Actually, it's more about listening and being vulnerable, or how we speak to people. But this algorithm is more about what you just described. It's setting up the environment and the way decisions are made, and the way that the structure of how people can interact with each other, so that trust is easy. And when you do listen, it enables those things to happen easier. So what we're talking about is kind of a layer below the human interactions and personalities that we have.
Yeah. So, I mean, just about everything I read about trust, and I've been reading the book, actually, The Trusted Advisor. I can't recall the author off the top of my head, but it's a really great. It's a really great model, and they've got a trust equation, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it is about that interpersonal. What are the things that we can do as somebody's in an advisor role, whether it's a consultant or an internal HR professional, or whatever. And definitely there is that sort of intimacy, vulnerability piece also, following through, right? And all those things are important, but I realize that if you have an organization structure that's all messed up,
Yeah.
almost said all jacked up, but then I just did that. So let's say the organization structure is all jacked up, then it doesn't matter how much listening and empathy and all the other things that are important that you do, it's still very, very hard to build that trust-based culture. So that's sort of where this came from. Like, I know that when I encounter conflicts or problems at clients, I kind of run it through this filter, and this helps me figure out kind of, where the problem might be stemming from at the systems level rather than at the interpersonal level. Can you think of any examples, names changed to protect the innocent, that you could share that give people a sense for how this might work?
Yeah, there's our company went through a significant merger with another company. It's now been 3 years, and I don't have to list names. There's some stereotypical things that happen when you have two companies come together like that, and or a small business kind of bringing in new leaders. Same thing. You might have your own trust algorithm and how things work in two companies, and then you try and cram that into one brand new company, and it's going through that redefining accountability. What does accountability look like? And I love the previous chapter about skin in the game. It's we think of accountability often as the negative side. It's either one or the other. What are the things I'm going to gain or benefit from, or what's the pain or the consequence I'm going to feel? And real honest accountability in this context is there's something to gain, and if it doesn't go well, there is a consequence. And making sure that people in your organization and the roles and responsibilities they have, that those accountabilities are clear. And there's something that you're striving for, and maybe things that you're trying to avoid. Authority, again, in that when you're bringing in new leaders or combining organizations, is very confusing, and there's just going to be some uncertainty and a time period of battling what that looks like. But it's something that you can clearly set who has authority to do what, and make sure that that's just really clear through the organization. The capability piece, when you're bringing on new people to an organization, the thing that struck me with this is we hire for capabilities, or we promote people or place them in roles due to capability. It's also important that you pay attention to the perceived capability from others. If you mentioned you have people that somebody's trying to make a decision, but they don't have the authority to follow through on it, is an issue. But if you've got someone in a role that their peers or others don't believe they actually have the skills or knowledge, it happens a lot in technology positions, where people just may not believe they know enough to make that decision, and people won't trust their decision because they don't trust the knowledge. And so when you dig into it, it gets very complicated. But I think having the algorithm and just those categories to think about when you do have conflict or something that's not going well, is it, have we clearly defined accountability, or is that not clear? Is the authority clear to the individual that needs to make a decision and to the others around them? Is a key thing. Is the communication has to be broad and clear everywhere. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit.
Yeah, well, if you think about capability, so capability isn't just one thing, so it's not set in stone. Like, it's skills, some of which we can add to our skills and experience. I can think of a lot of times where you might have a leadership team that's been working together a long time, then you introduce one or two new people to this tight-knit team. This tight-knit team already has what would you call it, like organizational, like they have the know-how,
norms or whatever.
That how things work. But these new people do not. they don't know that stuff. And they may know, maybe they're marketing, maybe they know all about marketing stuff. They may even know a fair bit about the industry that the company's in, but they don't know how things are done. And they have to demonstrate, and demonstrate kind of credibility in their abilities, and that certainly is a part of capability. The other part of capability is interest. So just because I can do something, like for example, you put me in a role that's all about like, I don't know, writing contracts, doing insurance, paperwork. Can I do it? Yes. Do I want to do it? And will I put energy into doing it because I hate it?
Right. Yeah.
I will not do that. And I've seen situations where this happens a lot when a company's growing, where you've got somebody maybe in engineering, and as the company and their team grows, then more and more of their role is about managerial skills instead of just the technical skills.
Yes.
And maybe they can do it, but they really would rather not.
Yeah. We've gone through that a lot in the last few years. I was gonna, it's that I think another very common example of, there are some people that are natural. They have the instincts to lead people. They communicate well. They easily build trust. They do everything that you've written about in this book, but they don't want that responsibility. And forcing someone into that role is just that's not good for anybody. Not going to end well.
No. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It's like we all have things that are on our to-do list, and they always end up at the bottom. And then things on the bottom are usually the things that we don't like doing.
Yeah.
I can think of another example where I was in the corporate world, and we were bringing in a vice president hire from the outside. And this was one of the first times that we had done this. We were young. I don't know if we even had that many vice presidents at that point in time. And, and we worked hard, and trying to make sure that the skill set and the experience, was relevant. We were trying to be clear on what was expected, but it ended up not working out. And because a couple things came up, and if we look at it through the trust algorithm, one being there's like a cognitive capability. Like this was like a leadership team of very bright people, some of whom had PhDs, very quick thinkers. And this person just didn't have that rapidity of pace in terms of thinking and responding. And that really, I think it made it harder for him to display his skill sets because he probably just didn't feel as comfortable in that environment, or because I find it hard to believe that he just, didn't have the capability to do that level of contribution. And then I think that, I don't know if we were clear enough on what the expectations were. Probably we weren't clear enough on what the exact expectations were of the role, because it was loose and we weren't sure, because it was undergoing change, even as we made this decision to hire somebody. Like what parts of this functional area is more important, ended up being maybe a different part was actually more important. And if later after we decided.
Yeah, well, I think that change, anytime you're going through change, there's this, 3 categories of things that you've created for people to kind of diagnose a situation, but it is never, once you achieve it, it doesn't just stay there. Like it is a constant effort to keep it in check. And so anytime you have change inserted anywhere, you've always got to be rechecking, have we communicated clearly? This changes your level of authority a little bit, or this changes what your responsibilities are, what you're accountable to, and bringing on roles that are we know we need somebody, but we don't exactly know what you need to do. Like those first 30 days really should be, we need to define exactly what it is you're going to do, and that's your task right now. Because otherwise you're not setting anybody up to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. That, not just, what the person in that role is responsible for, but, what the other
The
parties
people
in
around
there.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then not even just direct reports, but, like, who do I go to get information? Who is monitoring the quality of whatever it is that I do? How do we
Yeah.
interact with, legal or HR or whatever, in this organization?
And it's one of those things when you have it, you feel it and you know it's there. And when you don't, you also feel it and you know something's not quite right. We've had a few years, like I said, it's never a static thing, it's always changing, but I had the pleasure of several years of my work life where our entire leadership team was very committed to this very thing. We didn't talk about it in the same way we're talking about it today, but the clear communication and clear responsibilities was that we knew who was responsible for what, and we leaned on each other to leverage that. I never felt like I had to take on more than what was mine. I had to own mine, and I knew other people had everything else around me. And the things that were decisions happen fast. You do a lot less second guessing. And what we're just saying, it kind of filters through the rest of the organization because it becomes clear for all levels on who do I go to for information. If I need an answer to something, where should I go? And there's a confidence in the answer I get because I can tell the answer is so connected through the whole business that it's a beautiful thing when it happens, but it's really hard.
Yeah. Well, it
And
sounds
so
like
worth it though.
there was a lot of institutional trust, I think, at that point, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, there was, and there still is, but we've had some major change. And so what we find that we're doing now is looking back to what are the things that we enjoyed and benefited from when we had this all lined up, and where do we have gaps? Let's fix those gaps. And so it does give you a way to kind of, it can't fix everything overnight, but a little bit of communication and better defining roles and just tackle that makes a huge difference. Huge.
Yeah.
Difference.
And another example that I remember seeing was my boss's boss somewhere previously. And in this case, trust broke down not because the person didn't have great interpersonal skills, because he had great interpersonal skills, not because he didn't have a tremendous amount of experience in the field of human resources, had a tremendous amount of experience in the field of human resources, and in particular in recruiting. And that was the area where I was probably most focused at the time. So, it's not like, this person has done work similar to what I'm responsible for now. I mean, that the answer to that was absolutely yes. So, but what ended up happening is because this is my boss's boss, this person had responsibilities that were quite far beyond what I was doing. And they had to navigate, I don't know, the politics of, kind of the leadership team and the different dynamics, had to make decisions about directions to take that were, a longer time horizon than anything I had to deal with. And even though I didn't have visibility to those exact things, it's still, you could tell.
Right. It's just a feeling.
You could tell, and you're like, and you just get this feeling. I think we've all seen this, and gosh, it's terrible if we've experienced it ourselves. But this feeling of, wow, this role I feel like I'm in over my head, and that can happen. Sometimes a role is just so complex in ways that we didn't foresee. And that kind of thing isn't for everyone. So
yeah. I'm trying to think of other some other good examples. Like we deal with this every day.
I have a good one that's going to
All the
embarrass
time.
you. How about that?
Oh,
Yay.
great.
So
Darn, I
like
should have had another.
the counterpoint, yeah, pressure. Um, by the way, Cathi loves being the center of attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the counterpoint to that was, I remember many, many years ago where there was discussion amongst the leadership team about kind of who among the groups got the best, I don't know, capability and high potential to step into an executive HR leadership role. And I remember, I think the person that we're talking about probably can do it, but I say, Cathi, I think you're the one actually that belongs in that seat. She's like, no. And then anyway, so she's in the seat and has been, so patting myself on the back. But the point being is that, some of these complicated and very complex roles aren't for everyone. And it's not a criticism. For thank God we've got some people who can do that. And thank God we've got other people who are doing other parts of the business, because without everyone, the whole thing falls apart. Mm-hmm. So, but if it's just as unkind to put somebody in a role where they feel like they're trapped and micromanaged because they can do so much more, as it is unkind to put someone into a role where they aren't equipped or ready for the complexity of the role. It's equally uncomfortable. People don't always just want bigger and more. They just want something that fits them properly.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I think there's a lot in what you just said for leaders, people that are building businesses or growing a business, and you have people in your organization that you might see potential in, like, and you and I have worked together a long time. So there are things I see in you that you don't see, and vice versa, you see in me, and I'm like, no way, not doing that. But the only one of the things I think that helped me be successful in stepping into a role I did not feel prepared for, like the accountability and authority felt way bigger than I wanted to take on. But I had a team of people around me that I can leverage my, VP of finance and CFO for some of the financial pieces that I was aware of, but not at that level. And I've learned so much from him. And now he leans on me for people things that are blind spots for him. So, you use this concept to kind of leverage the people around you, and people growing a business to think about, how you build teams. And that's how you set the stage for, trust to happen in your organization.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know, like with a small business, there are a lot of people wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And then maybe somewhere along the way, you bring in somebody who's an experienced executive from somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're maybe grooming other people. And I
Right.
think, when do you know it's a right risk to make to pull somebody up because they've got the chops, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can pick up the details as we go,
Mm-hmm.
versus maybe this is just going to be too much and maybe not what they really would enjoy.
Yeah.
And making that distinction can be difficult.
But that's why we reach out to people like Alicia to help to help with those decisions, and plan your organizations, and assess and interview and recruit the right way. Mm-hmm. to know when people are ready, and that you're not forcing somebody into a role that they're really not interested in.
Yeah. So one more example, and if you have one more example, we can do that, and then I guess wrap it up. But I was just talking to a business leader recently, and he's like, I'm kind of frustrated or puzzled, or like this team member that I have in a leadership role, middle manager, I guess, role, like she's awesome. She's amazing. She's all these great things that are really wonderful for the business. But I'm struggling, as I'm sort of saying his words, I'm struggling with, when I give guidance, it feels like she's not taking the guidance and running with it in the way that I would like. And or I'm expecting, and so sometimes the trust algorithm can be, for me, a tool to help the leader understand, well, in order to give instructions at the right level of fidelity for that person, here's what it's going to have to look and feel like. Maybe it's the easiest for you to give them in this manner, and that fits you. But if you're going to give instructions and guidance and some guardrails to that person, it needs to have just a little more structure to it, and that has to be your responsibility. And then he's like, that completely changed everything about how I think about stuff.
Isn't it funny? It's simple, but yet not. Yeah, it's very much the other it is all about the perception of other people, and making sure that the expectations you have in your head as a leader, business owner, are clearly communicated in ways that you have to put yourself in the shoes of those people and the roles that they're doing. What level of information would they need to understand their responsibility, and when you expect them to make decisions and when you don't? Like
Have you experienced that?
Back.
Have you experienced that at all?
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah, we have, when people are experts at things and you understand something, it's just like knowing the back of your hand. You don't realize that I can't talk to somebody else that doesn't have the same background and expect them to run with an action item. If I did, you just, I'm not describing that well, but you have to put yourself in the mind of the person that you're trying to, influence and give direction to.
Yeah. I mean, some people function best when they've got really clear details. I mean, I had somebody else saying to me, like, oh, I hired this person. I think, this junior recruiter, and I think she's the most amazing, person. She's fantastic in all these ways, but man, I wrote out all these processes and all these things and onboarding, and she keeps asking me for more details. It's just, I'm like, what? And and what ended up happening is that she went ahead and she's like, okay, I didn't want to have to do it, because she's like, I wanted to do other things, but I spent the time and made sure that all the questions that she had or clarifications or contacts that this new hire needed in order to go forward, that she got them and she provided them. And if she couldn't provide them, she made sure that she was connected to somebody else and got those questions answered. And and I checked back with her a few weeks later. She was like, oh yeah, like now she's great. Going and and it's amazing, and she's just as great as I imagined that she'd be. So we just have to get through that step. But different people have different needs for details or different types of details, and that sort of is all wrapped up in kind of the capability piece, and how you communicate what the accountabilities are to somebody's got to match.
It does. We could talk about this for hours,
We could. We usually do, one way or the other.
Yeah, we do. Hey, we have time for me to ask you one question that I could have asked you in the several times I've read through your book, but did you have any intentionality, or what's the thought process in kind of the order of the chapters as they came together? Or is it that's just how it came together?
Okay, so I have a list of about 30 or so heuristics or sound bites is what I've called them in the past, but I'm just calling them heuristics. And in the new version of the book, I define what heuristic is. I know that's a $20 word. I've had some people tell me that they had to look it up. I'm sorry. I
You define it
apologize.
at the end of the book.
You can find it at the end of I put it at the beginning. It's now at the beginning. Anyway, so what happened was I've got 30 or so. And I started drawing the artwork, and at some point I realized that I have so many of these that I was never going to actually have a book if I waited until I did all of them. So I thought I'm going to let me look at the drawings and see which ones I feel like I'm happy with. And I had 10. I'm like, lovely. 10's a nice round number. These are the heuristics, because each drawing is based on a heuristic. These are the heuristics I'm going with. And then maybe more to your question is like, okay, what order should the ones that have been selected in this strange manner, should they go in, so that they seem to flow one into the other? And so I did put them in order in terms of what seemed to logically precede the next. So there was some intentionality there.
Well, I was, as I've read through it a couple of times now, it's it's a very natural flow. I of course, we're talking about trust. That's one that, it's a topic I love. We deal with stuff all the time. Everything, all the chapters leading up to it are kind of key pieces that need to be in place for trust to really happen. And then when you get that level of trust there, the following 2 chapters, it gets much easier to simplify things, because you're able to communicate and talk at a deeper level, because you're not wasting time on the kind of noisy communication when everybody knows their place in an organization. And then it creates tons of opportunities for gratitude. And you just enjoy work so much better when all those things are in place. And it's worth the effort. But it felt intentional and it has a great flow. So I was just curious.
It was, and the next ones that we do, I will have 10 more, and I will put them in order.
Can't wait.
Some sort of order. But yeah. Well, Cathi, thank you for your time. It's valuable. It's valuable to me personally, and the work you do is important, and probably unsung. So.
Well, I'm honored that you asked me to participate, and just so glad to actually see this come together and you getting this information out there the way that you and I together have thought about human resources as a profession for years. It's really fun to see this come out in this way. So good on you.
Well, thank you. I wouldn't be here without you. So
Awesome.
thanks.
Thank you.